Greetings to all fans of Italian football and Inter Milan in particular. Welcome to the 40th episode of the podcast Nerazzurri Talks. Sisto sia studia. We are trying to maintain some pace, and so we are here again. To start, I have a few news items, and we will discuss the interesting things that have happened in the last approximately 2 weeks. To begin, I have to start with the unpleasant news, probably the hottest from Inter's locker room, and that is the unfortunate accident that happened to our second goalkeeper, Josep Martinez, who hit an 81-year-old man in a wheelchair with his car. And according to witnesses, it was not his fault in any way. He also tried to help the gentleman, but it ended badly. So Martinez is in shock, of course, and Inter is providing him with full psychological support. I think he just returned to the training center today, but of course the club is not pressuring him about when he will return to football. Further, when we look at the last match which Inter played against Fiorentina, we will analyze it in more detail later, but Inter kept only their third clean sheet in the last 11 home games, so that's an interesting fact. Once again, the referees gave us a bit of trouble. Former referee Gianpaolo Calvarese condemned 2 tackles by Comusa on Esposito, saying they were not judged as penalties. Fortunately, this time it didn't have to bother us, unlike the match with Napoli. We'll get to that later. Regarding the squad, Marcus Thuram should return, or rather, he is already training fully and will be available against Verona this Sunday. Well, and then from the competitors in Serie A, probably the most interesting news is, of course, the dismissal of Igor Tudor at Juventus, who was replaced by the coach with a tattooed Napoli logo, Luciano Spalletti. So we will see how this interesting connection will work. But according to what Del Piero said, the problems at Juventus are elsewhere, not in the coach's position. So we will see. Yes, and our other competitor is fighting for the title. Naples will have to manage without Kevin De Bruyne, who got injured in the match against Inter, which, by the way, is the third time in his career that he got injured in a match against Inter. And this time he is expected to be out until February of next year. So who knows in what form and if he will return to football. And an interesting note from the opposite end of the table, where the fans of Verona and Pisa received a penalty. They are not allowed to travel to their teams' away matches due to violence between the ultras of these two teams. So that's it for the beginning, and let's break it down in detail. Hi, Rasto.
Hi, Michal.
So how do you perceive the events? Last time we met here, if I'm not mistaken, it was after Inter's victory over Cremonese. We were before the match with AS Roma.
Yes, so it was during this international break, and we were waiting to see how we would build on that very good end, or rather not the end, but the course between the two international breaks. And I have to say that I am quite satisfied with what our club is showing. The only thing that I can't say it bothers me, and that we will actually discuss in the future, but it turns out that Acerbi and De Frey, unfortunately, are absolutely unable to keep up with the current football. So that's that. But we will probably talk comprehensively, since we actually played as many as 4 matches during those 2 weeks. Each of them was basically different, so I don't know. Shall we start? Which one shall we start with?
we can go chronologically. So the first match after the international break was the match at the Olympic Stadium in Rome, where Inter won 1-0. Bani scored the goal with an assist from Barella right at the start of the match, and we successfully held on.
Well, it was quite a combative match. I have to say that I personally quite enjoyed it, as it was something I expected from the matches. Juventus Inter, that it would be combative, which it wasn't. It was more technical, but this match really was just a huge battle. It's a pity that only one goal was scored on our side, boo. But I think that the clean sheet pleased us, because after a long time it was a victory where we had to defend the result until the very last moments, and basically we didn't allow AS Roma any extremely clear chances. Zlatan had, I think, 2 big saves, but I say the intensity and the countless duels, it was really quite good to watch.
Well, for me personally, that match was a bit too fragmented. I'll support it statistically. 18 fouls on the side of AS Roma, 29 fouls on the side of Nerazzurri. So there was an incredibly large number of fouls, but it was a kind of battle, you know. Not every match can be just beautiful football. You can find something nice even in this match, and despite it ending just 0-1, it wasn't a boring match. The Romans probably had slightly bigger chances, but this time we were more effective and especially solid in defense. So important 3 points, and actually the first victory over a bigger opponent this season, since we lost to Juventus, and this was the second such bigger opponent.
Well, in the league, yes, but although Ajax, it's true, as he hasn't been such a big team in recent years, it is still a 14-time Champions League winner. So at least we won against a somewhat, let's say, historical team. But yes, it's probably our toughest opponent that we've defeated so far. It must be said that even AS Roma, since Ranieri took over last year, defends incredibly well. That must be acknowledged. Gasperoni, as Merciak renamed him the entire first half when he commented on the semi-final between Marseille and Atalanta 2 years ago. Well, Gasperoni adapted to it quite well, and everyone is actually tied for first place with Napoli. They conceded only 3 goals, so really it's not easy to play against them. And I say I enjoyed the match. I agree with you, it was chopped up like crazy. But on the other hand, when I think about it, the atmosphere there was amazing. That AS Roma doesn't like us and we don't like them either. We actually have an alliance with Lazio. So it is like that I experience it from such an Italian or fan perspective. So really, like, the match drew me into the action, and I was quite thrilled and counting down the last seconds. And I have to say again that for the first half, we probably deserved those 3 points, that they were maybe a bit better in the second half. But again, I'm saying they didn't really create any extra chances there. Except for that, I think they scored against Georgia or something. I'm mixing it up with something else. That's irrelevant. That's irrelevant. But I think there was a guy. Oh, actually no, because their Di Marco probably blocked his dangerous shot. So actually, apart from that, they had nothing. But I think that even for an unbiased viewer, and overall, it was such a battle for the Olympic Stadium, which we fortunately managed and confirmed the dominance we have against AS Roma.
Well, so we managed this gladiator battle. Valuable 3 points were at home, and 3 days later we traveled to Belgium for the match with Royal Union in the Champions League. Yes.
Let me stop you there. That actually in that match we overcame or rather added some of these historical statistics. That actually, for the first time in Serie A, it happened that one team scored 300 goals against another. Probably no one else has such a record. Well, also we have, I think, 5 consecutive victories in Rome, which practically hasn't happened yet, I guess. With 8 matches unbeaten in a row, it's quite a long streak, and it's been 10 years. Or rather, it will be 10 years since we last lost against the Romans. It's incredible.
And there was one more milestone for Nicolo Barella. He played his 300th match in an Inter jersey with a record of 26 goals and 62 assists.
Was that against Rome, not against Naples?
I think it was against Rome.
It was against Roma. Okay. So against Roma. All right. So you can see that it's really an Italian classic, and fortunately it turned out better for us.
So we traveled to Belgium in the Champions League for another mandatory 3 points, which we managed to take without any problems. At the end of the first half, Denzel Dumfries scored, then Lautaro Martinez. And at the beginning of the second half, the guys increased the lead plus a penalty. In the end, Pio Esposito also scored, so within 1 month he opened his scoring account in the national team, Serie A, and the Champions League. So a fantastic month for our young player and another convincing victory for Inter. So after 3 matches, we have 3 victories in the Champions League, a score of 19-0, and we are actually third, with Bayern and Paris Saint-Germain having a better score, and behind us with 9 points are Arsenal and Real Madrid.
Yes, well, it must be said that unfortunately or fortunately, in the end, no television in Czechoslovakia broadcast it, so we watched it on Arena Sport, which is actually a broadcaster in the States of the former Yugoslavia. But I have to say that I quite enjoyed it, and I read last time that actually the Balkans, and especially Yugoslavia, really favor Serie A. And it really pleased me that during the break they were showing nothing but advertisements for Italian football, and even in between they showed highlights from the UEFA Cup final in '98 when Ronaldo and Morano scored that iconic goal. So even this made me happy and now brought a bit of nostalgia for the old times.
Hey, although we traditionally started the match a bit later while we found the right stream, we were finally able to watch it.
No. But then again, you see that unfortunately, although we didn't see the beginning when they had the biggest chances. By the way, I have to say about Union Sangalo that they have quite a good record in the league. They are actually champions, and now they are in first place. They also have quite a lot of goals and few conceded, and it's a young, dynamic, aggressive team. And I think that actually in that match I was a bit scared about how Stefan de Vrij played, that he absolutely couldn't keep up with those runs. So it was completely logical that Bisek went up in the second half. I was pleased that he went to the center, as we talked about last time, that Akanji is at least on the right stopper and that he inverts to the center. So I was pleased that I tactically estimated it quite well, and Bisek was in the center. But I have to say that it was a huge difference when we have this defense, Bastoni, Bisek, and Akanji.
Just to correct you, Bisek started in the lineup and Akanji substituted de Vrij later.
Akanji, pardon, sorry. Yes. But I think that
But Bisek moved to de Vrij's position, yes.
Yes, you're right. I made a mistake. Yeah. Well, but actually then it was clear that when their offensive wings went, our defenders beautifully caught them and defended. But the second half was completely safe. And this is how I would imagine Inter should play.
Well, The sadder view was then on the other representatives of Serie A in the Champions League, because it was quite embarrassing when Inter was once again the only one actually collecting points for Serie A.
Well, unfortunately, that's how it is. Juventus had a very tough match against Real Madrid, where they showed a few shots, defended quite well, but I think Real Madrid completely deserved to win. Atalanta, on the other hand, had huge bad luck against Slavia when they couldn't score a goal.
She is still generally struggling with scoring.
Well, and this is how we assumed that Juric. I have to say I expected a slightly worse performance from Atalanta, that they would be more defensive. Now she's actually trying to attack, but those are exactly Juric's results: 0-0, 1-1, or rather 1-1 is his most typical result. And Naples, that was just something unbelievable, how they lost against PSV.
6-2, a loss in the Netherlands. Probably few predicted such a thrashing.
But it is the biggest defeat, I think, for Conte ever. His team has never conceded 6 goals before. And in European competitions, it is probably the biggest, it is the biggest defeat in European competitions, and he has never conceded 6 goals during his coaching career, so it is absolutely shocking.
Well, after these Champions League matches, it was true that ever since Juventus and Inter met in that head-to-head match, Juventus did not win even once in 7 matches, while Inter, on the other hand, won all 7. And in such good spirits, we traveled to Naples for a match between the two most successful teams of the last 5 years in terms of the Scudetto. Well, and there probably few expected such a disastrous result for Inter there, since Inter seemed to be in better form, while Naples, on the other hand, had problems plus injuries. However, the match in Naples ended with Inter losing 3-1, but it must be said without hesitation that the referees significantly influenced the match in the first half, when they first conjured up a completely fabricated penalty for De Bruyne, who converted it and got injured in the process of converting the penalty.
I don't wish him anything bad, but it was like karma.
And Chitarjan got injured during the tackle or the duel he was losing. Then the referees conjured up a second miracle when Billy Gilmore received a yellow card, which somehow miraculously he supposedly didn't get. And then at the end of the half he got a second one, but everyone acted like it was the first and he wasn't sent off.
Respectively.
If he really didn't get it for that first tackle, I still don't understand why. Since it was studs forward on the ankle, just a clear foul for a yellow, so Gilmore should have had a red. The penalty was completely fabricated for contact that wasn't even there, and this significantly influenced the events in the first half and in the second.
For a change, Inter completely fell apart.
Especially in the defense, that they match somewhat resembled the game with Juventus in the sense that from 3 shots on goal, we conceded 3 goals, and McTominay increased it to 2-0. Çalhanoğlu reduced it to 2-1. At that point, it looked like we might have a chance to get back into the game, but then Hagi outplayed our defense, and it was 3-1, and it was all over.
I will also add here that Billy Gilmore received only 1 yellow card, because there was a yellow card given, I think it was Politano. Although there should have been actually 2 yellow cards, that one should have been given. I think it was Politano, and
Politano did not have a yellow card, so then it must have been Di Lorenzo.
Then it was Di Lorenzo. And I also heard an analysis from an expert used by CBS Sport, the American television network that has broadcasting rights for the USA. Well, and she actually stated that both should have received a yellow card. and that actually the second tackle by Billy Gilmore was such that he also got a yellow card for it, so he should have received a red card. Similarly, that penalty also shouldn't have been given, although there was some contact, but it wasn't intense enough to be a foul.
He just barely touched him, and he already fell to the ground on his own. So in her opinion, it was a bad penalty. But even when we look at what the referees in the Italian league or in Italy, as well as journalists said, they also expressed that it was too soft a penalty, or that it shouldn't have been a penalty, and also that Billy Gilmore should have been sent off. Well, and actually the referee was also punished, so he won't be officiating the next match, or at least one match, and him and his assistant, I think.
The assistant got it for a month, I think.
Or even just for a month, and that referee only for one match. So finally, even the referees association, those obvious mistakes that happen against us, have started to address them a little, because if we consider that last year there were so many mistakes that the title ended up as it did, and this year again, so the mistakes are piling up again, even in the match against Napoli. It's a bit frustrating, but I want to say that despite the referee's mistakes in the first half, we had several chances, and unfortunately we just couldn't capitalize on them. Bastoni hit the post, Dumfries hit the post, the bar, and then Lautaro shot from close range, and the ball curved and went wide. Not to mention that in the 14th minute, Najast had a chance against the goalkeeper and just didn't convert it. So despite all that, we could have easily been winning by a large margin, and no one would have questioned anything. Or we might have been angry at the referees, but in the end, it would have been a completely different match. And now we just have to state that we lost. And what is even more alarming, so what I mentioned in the match with Union, that Defri was absolutely not keeping up. The same applies to Acerbi, and credit should be given where it's due. And really the fact that Conte benched Luka and didn't put Nias as a false nine, and that Acerbi, such an experienced player, decided to mark him personally and be his shadow, then I'm not surprised that within half an hour he was completely exhausted, or rather by the second half.
It was really visible that they were just trailing behind, and those two goals, especially the goal of the dead on me, that was something unbelievable. There was basically nobody there.
Hey. So I can basically continue smoothly since we're discussing the referees. Also about the Inter Fiorentina match, which took place. We're recording on Thursday. The match was played on Wednesday, where Inter convincingly won 3-0. But there was also criticism of the referees here. Even these were or will be punished somehow, because again, two clear penalties were not called in favor of Inter after fouls on Esposito. In both cases, actually, Coman was blatantly pulling him without any intention to play the ball, and in either case did VAR or the main referee intervene. So Marotta League looks like this in Italy, that again we had to struggle a bit, although in the end the match in the second half was dazzled by Çalhanoğlu with a typical shot from outside the penalty area. Then Petar Sucic scored his debut goal after a beautiful individual action. So in a short time, we were leading 2-0. And at the end, after a foul on Bani, even a blind person would have seen that tackle.
So then there was a correctly given second yellow, meaning a red card for Viti, a penalty for Inter, which Çalhanoğlu calmly took. I immediately redeemed myself for that match. it was in Naples.
Well, yes, you know what? I take it like this, that right after the penalty on Mkhitaryan, then I think AIA, which is actually the Italian Referees Association, issued a statement that those soft penalties should not be called. So now there was a match against Fiorentina and it was like brutal. No, because if we compare what the penalty was for in the Fiorentina and AC Milan match, I think, but it's irrelevant who it was. So he just lightly touched Gimenez and he fell to the ground and a penalty was awarded and basically 3 points for AC. It was a total farce. I laughed at the television when I saw it, and then when I look at it like this, so at first I said that the referee was doing a good job, and I really enjoyed that he didn't whistle for every contact and really set the bar quite high, and the match was great because of that. Fiorentina played quite well in defense, though they weren't as good in attack, and that again relates to the fact that since Mkhitaryan is injured and Acelvi with Defram were on the bench, we finally had a fast defense. But for those three fast stoppers, because there is already some data and comparisons, Inter under Kim has a defensive line 8 meters higher. Or rather, the average position of the defenders in the match is 8 meters higher. So really, because it already means that he has to sprint back. Now the same goes for Defree, and it's evident that they can't keep up anymore. So it's evident that these young fast runners suit us, and then we are also defensively strong because they still have the stamina. Well, what I wanted to say is that actually, so the first foul on that by Esposito, I would say yes, okay, and it was a duel. Both were holding each other when they held him more, but fine, I accept that. But the second turn on where he held him almost by the neck and pulled him down, it's incomprehensible to me why it wasn't whistled, and even if it wasn't maybe the referee, then VAR should have alerted him to it and at least shown it to him, and in the end that didn't even happen.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, I also saw it that way, that the first one was still good. When we consider that soft penalties shouldn't be called, but the former referee expressed that this should have been a penalty too, I could accept that. But the second foul, really, he literally hung on to him, which actually prevented him from moving, pulled him down, and Esposito didn't get to finish, so there definitely should have been a penalty, but we will probably have to get used to the fact that simple penalties are simply not being called for Inter this season, unlike
Well, that is not
from the teams, and we will have to be that much better.
So not just this season, but if you think about it, I laughed when they showed that graphic that Hakan's last 5 penalties and there was one red missed one. So since Hakan almost exclusively takes penalties for us, you can see that when there was a missed penalty a year ago, well, in a year we took 5 penalties, so that's quite few, right? Compared to other teams, they really don't want to call those penalties for us. But I sometimes don't quite understand it, you know. Just remember last year when Biseka pulled, I think that Dika, if it had been a penalty, then maybe Napoli wouldn't have the title. So it's pointless, right? We'll just discuss those now. Those mistakes against us, there are just too many, and you don't really want to blame the referees or anything, but I understand exactly that our players are already irritated, they're allergic, and for example, that Udinese match, I already mentioned before in the podcast, when there was that strange handball and penalty, I knew that our players from Sipu would be nervous, and it's the same with Napoli. It was just obvious that the penalty, even when it was called, was so poorly whistled. 8 seconds after the incident, I already knew that it would make the players totally nervous the whole time. By the way, we forgot to mention the altercation between Lautaro and Konda.
Yes, I quite liked that. Those were the right emotions. I feel that recently or in the last seasons, like since Napoli and Inter are the biggest title contenders, I feel that their mutual matches are bigger derbies. Although someone criticized me a lot for daring to call it a derby, it's simply more intense between Inter and Napoli than those matches with Juventus or even with AC Milan.
By the way, it should be said that the rivalry between Inter and Napoli is historical. It always was, yes, although it's true that Napoli was mostly a team that played for about fifth place in the standings when considering the entire history. But it was always such that the fans and the club considered it a rivalry. Something like between Slovan and Košice, right? So that's just how it is. Well, that Inter, the team from the north, and even that Inter is actually a representative of the wealthy part of Milan. And then it goes to the poor south, or rather to the poor, well, it's just the poorer part. And Naples is exactly that kind of counterpoint to Milanese elegance. That's how it is. It's just the way it is, the Neapolitans really don't like us, and likewise the Inter fans don't like Naples. So those matches were always intense, and the same goes for AS Roma. So maybe someone wonders why you wrote that it's a derby, but if it's not a derby, then it's like a mega rivalry.
That's about it. Well, I am what I am. On a more pleasant note, I'll mention that there was quite a nice moment at the end of the match with Fiorentina. Edin Dzeko also went onto the field, and after the match, San Siro applauded him, our fans, so they fondly remember this legendary striker who spent some time at Inter.
Really, unlike Lukaku, he did not betray our team, and it's a pity he left because he was no longer considered for the future, as Lautaro, Lukaku, Thuram, and Correa were supposed to be in the attack, and in the end, Lukaku left. Dzeko has already agreed with Fenerbahce, and again, I say he left on good terms, so they applauded him, and I also liked that they didn't boo him or anything, even though it's true they have no reason to boo Edin Dzeko.
Well, in 2 seasons at Fenerbahce, he scored 21 goals in the first one after leaving Inter, and then 14 goals in the next. So despite being 39 years old, he still scores goals, although he hasn't scored in Serie A this season yet and plays relatively regularly. But the one who is quite successful in scoring is Hakan Çalhanoğlu. He already has 5 goals in Serie A this season. That's as many as he scored in the entire last season.
Yes, I have to say that I am excited, and maybe last season was marked by those injuries and the fact that he simply had to play much more than he could have. Respectively, there were I think about 30 matches or so because he had injuries, but he didn't manage to get 100% fit and had to play since Baslani was the alternative for his position. Now, thank God, it might be a bit harsh to say, but we have other alternatives. So he managed to recover, and now he is in really excellent form. For me, in the match with Fiorentina, he was the man of the match, and yes, he has quite a few goals. I think 6 in all.
Yes, in the Champions League, one more, so 6 in total.
Well, it's quite a good number because he played 9 matches, 6 goals for a defensive midfielder. That's decent. But it's also about how he plays, how he fights, how he wins balls, how he tracks back. It's phenomenal, and I'm happy about it that he's once again the real Hakan Çalhanoğlu, and I hope that with him we will extend the contract for at least, not just at least, but for 2 years, and he won't be sold in a hurry.
Overall, I really liked the performance of the midfield trio in the match against Fiorentina, and this brings us to the idea that every cloud has a silver lining, right? Chaitarian got injured and he should be out for about a month, which opened up a position there. After Mkhitaryan's injury, Zielinski replaced him, but he didn't really convince again, didn't fully take on the role. So now Peter Sucic started in the lineup. In the first half, he didn't seem that good to me, but in the second half, he was more prominent and topped it off with a really beautiful goal. And overall, he had very good ratings. So this midfield trio was perfect. And we mentioned before that for the first time in the starting lineup, this defensive trio played with Bisek in the center, Akanji on the right, and Bastoni on the left. And it was very noticeable that this time we didn't lack speed at the back. Therefore, even when we play that higher defensive line, they managed to keep up at the back. Because if there's something that hasn't worked well under Chivu until this match with Fiorentina, it's precisely the defense, right? In 9 matches, we conceded 11 goals, which is actually the most from that. Only 12th place, the Udine, has conceded more goals. So we have really conceded a lot of goals so far. So, although also a lot.
Unfortunately,
We score a lot, 22 goals is by far the best attack, but we conceded too many. But this could be the solution, that simply Bisek also delivered a fantastic performance in the middle, which I know we discussed when Akanji arrived, that he is more versatile and it is possible that he will move to the center and Bisek will be on the right.
Well, it's the opposite, but it works excellently.
Well, I thought there's, if anything, then Bisek in the middle, because it would be not a waste, but simply Akanji suits him perfectly. Such freedom to invert into the midfield, and it just kind of works. And what we couldn't fail to mention is that Bastoni quite moved forward and operated in the midfield.
Hey, he had a nice chance again.
Well, actually, yes. Hey, we forgot that we also created an incredible number of chances against Fiorentina, and unfortunately 3 goals is still quite a lot, but considering how much De Gea saved, so there could easily have been more,
On one hand, hats off to De Gea, because those 5 saves he made were really great, and I was already worried that we would make him a hero and that the match would end badly, but fortunately we managed to turn it around in the end.
Yes, and I'm also maybe thinking about that because that's perhaps the biggest, I'm not saying mistake of Chivu, but a bit of a weakness that he made some, not just some, but significantly changed the tactic, pressing more and having a higher defensive line. Actually, when we consider it 8-something meters or almost 9, we are almost reaching the level of Barcelona, which is mentioned in connection with having a high defensive line. So we are quite close to that, at least if the statistics are completely correct. Well, but unfortunately, as I said, our players, Acerbi and Defrel, can't keep up. Catching is excellent positionally, but if we want to play more vertically and press, then after all, he has his limits in terms of speed, and it's really noticeable when Sucic is there because he's just young, fast, dynamic, and our game looks completely different when we play with those young ones.
By the way, I have a feeling that throughout the whole match, the commentator called him Sucic and not Such.
I honestly didn't notice, as I was more focused on the game, but I did notice, that Barrel was trying to, he said Barrel, and sometimes had these, and I was also wondering if it might be good if Chivu finally tried playing with 4 defenders, how it would look, because I think we have the squad for it, the squad to play 4-3-3 absolutely without problems.
And I would be curious to see how it would look then.
But who would you bench from the 11 that played against Fiorentina?
Well, that's precisely the question, isn't it? Because Akanji would be excellent, Bastoni too. But the question is whether, because honestly, if I have to say in that trio that's there, I can imagine Akanji playing in the middle. That's not a problem. So, and the same goes for Bastoni. Although ideally, Akanji and Bastoni are on the sides and Bisek is in the middle. By the way, since we're praising Bisek, I have to say that besides being fast, strong in duels, etc., his passing was something remarkable. It was sharp, quick, precise. And then when I think about it, and again, I'm not hating on Acerbi, but no.
Yes, we know exactly.
We know he has his limits in this, and really, even that second makes quite a difference in modern football, right? So Acerbi's reaction time is significantly slower than Bisek's. But to get back to the point, the main question is whether if Luis Enrique played from the wing or Boni from the wing, and so whether it would give the team more than playing with Bisek in the middle, because to be honest, probably the defensive trio Bastoni, Ace, Bastoni, Bisek, Akanji, then we might have two players, and that is Darmian and Carlos Augusto, who still have the defensive speed to allow us to play so high. And it's also strange to say, since I really like De Freyr and I get along with Cherby, but honestly, the mistakes they make because they are slow and we play high and then we concede such silly goals, it's like, I don't know.
I think their place in the squad should be such that they simply pass on experience, act as mentors, and be ready for when we need to close it at the back at the end of a match. If a stronger opponent is pressing us, then these experienced defenders who are strong will come in personal defense and help to cement something there. But if we want to play our game with a high defensive line and just dynamically, then there have to be these younger, faster defenders. Besides that, not only the running speed itself, but also, as you mentioned, those passes, it's enough that Acerbi makes a slow pass, for example, and the player has to go back to it, or it stands and it slows down the whole action and so on. So it relates not only to defense, but also to offense.
Yes, exactly. And the second big problem is, for example, De Frey, that I also had a moment recently. So I actually watched the matches Conte played, or rather the statistic. So actually Conte played, I was thinking about it, and I even used artificial intelligence why De Frey was able to play so many matches under Conte and under Inzaghi less so, and even though not under Chivu, it's like that. So there it is, exactly that Conte played completely the best among them. Thus De Frey didn't have to make such advances because he is really quite battered by football, and we'll see how he will handle the intensity. But for now, it's like if the opponent is like Cremona, he doesn't have to defend much and he's just there as a libero for distribution. Well, it was great, but as soon as he has to defend, you can see that he has his limits, and especially in the last season, he played 3 or 4 matches and then had to be on the bench because he was unfortunately injured. And we already mentioned that he keeps getting injured there, whether it's the knees or the groin. So that's how it is, And I was saying, why the 4-3-3? So if we want to play with those 3 defenders, but such a high line, well, I don't know who would be the alternative for those 3. I think I'm saying Carlos Augusto, maybe Darmian can handle it, and that's it. Who else to put there?
Yes. And while both Darmian and Carlos Augusto do have that speed, they are not as reliable in defense as this trio. So maybe for matches against some less skilled attackers, yes, but otherwise they are not entirely suitable alternatives, not to mention that Darmian is currently injured.
Well, exactly.
That's just how it is. Unfortunately, it is what it is.
Palacios is also injured, but he hasn't played a minute, so we don't feel it at all.
So unfortunately, he was supposed to be sold for 7 million to Santos, but he refused to leave Europe, which is a shame, but unfortunately, and again, it's also a mistake that we bought him when we didn't want him.
I don't understand that purchase, to be honest, because we basically paid 7 million for nothing. But if I go back to the 4-3-3, if you think about it, we have a squad ideally built for it because we have quite a few positions doubled. And in this, on the right defense, Dumfries could alternate as the main right offensive back. Akanji and Bisek with the thought that Bisek could easily play in certain matches as the right back, even though he might not be as offensive as Dumfries, but he still has speed. The same goes for Akanji. And on the other side, it's the same with Di Marco, Bastoni, Carlos Augusto. So that's completely fine. The midfield is actually exactly the same. And the attack? I also looked at Luis Henrique, since he is quite criticized for costing 25,623,000 and not playing much. But he actually has the most goals and assists, and just felt in Murphy in the position of a typical winger because he's not completely a wing back or midfielder, but he is really like that modern wing forward, and there he is really great.
He stands out well in that. He was absolutely the best there.
Hey, but I've been saying this from the beginning, that to me this Luis Henrique seems exactly like Bouchenet, and before him, or even before him, Valentino Lazaro, and so on, that simply fast legs, skillful technique and everything, but simply more of a winger than a wing back.
And in the system we played under Conte, then under Inzaghi, and basically still now under Chivu, there is not really space for such players. That's why they never really assert themselves. So I'm curious if the current coach will ever decide on this change of formation that you mentioned, because that would actually be a significant change after many years of practically permanently playing 3-5-2. Although the system is always a bit different, the formations on the field always look a bit different, but the lineup essentially remains the same.
Yes, so the starting point is the same, but if you actually notice now, and that's what I actually wanted to say, that in the match with Fiorentina, it was most visible there, that Di Marco completely moved forward and Bastoni was like a left back. So like we kind of played that formation sometimes like 4-3-3, but it maybe requires a bit of courage, because I might add that Luis Enrique is really like that offensive winger, because even Lazaro and even Perisic, so they, in their time, they also played defenders or full backs offensively, but Luis Enrique never played. Hey, it's just like if you made, I'm not saying he has the same quality as Salah, but he was the first to come to mind. Like if you made Salah a right back, hey, that's nonsense. Just like a right big back, that's just nonsense. Because you want a big back to run up there, to defend for you and to close the post or send a cross into the penalty area, but he prefers to dribble, to take on a player, to pass into the penalty area, or to score a goal, right? So for him.
And the numbers confirm that as a big back, Marcel was not entirely productive, and when he played left wing or right wing, he had quite a few goals and assists.
7 goals, 7 assists in Marseille, which I think was one of the most productive in that season, 2024 to 2025.
Exactly. But if you look at those highlights, you can see that he has the football skills, that it's not just we had before. What was the name of that total flop from Spalletti?
Dalbert,
exactly. Jesus, that was for 30 million. That is not like Dalbert, right? It's really evident there that he has techniques, speed, skill, but he simply can't play as a wing back. He has to play higher up. Or maybe wait a year until they transform him, but then it's completely pointless. I don't know what your opinion is on that, how you would address our lapses, that it's evident that when we play with the younger ones, it's better than when we play
with veterans.
And I believe that the coach has already seen and understood this and will stick to it. That for what he wants to play, he simply needs that movement, that dynamism, and these younger players. So even Mkhitaryan won't save it with his good positional play, even if he recovers from that injury. So for him, the same applies as I said about Acerbi Madrid's guy, right? That experience, yes, in certain phases of the match can help the team bring some calm, do the dirty work. I can still imagine him as a valuable member of the squad, let him play out his contract, but no longer consider him as the first choice for the center. So that's it. So I definitely agree with that we need to bring in some youth and that finally the young players we have in the lineup have enough quality to play in the starting lineup. We'll see about Andy Diouf, who is still waiting for some more playing time. Maybe now he will get a chance to play like it's Fratesi is always ready like an eternal joker. Zelensky still can't get into form, even though it wasn't completely bad from his side, but he's just a player to make up the numbers and probably the first one I would sell, if anything.
Well, I can only agree with that. Like Zelensky would be fabulous if he hadn't been so injured last year. He was fabulous for Inzaghi's style because he's exactly that kind of positional player, creative and so on. In that Italian version of tiki-taka or what Inzaghi does, having the ball and controlling the match.
But if we want to play the kind of game system, which is the Chivu, the just pressing high and playing vertically, it's also like that. Mainly it's about the fact that he's not quite succeeding. If I have to say it like that, I definitely prefer having Sucic or Fratesi there rather than Zelensky, because those two are much more valuable for the team.
And I might also mention Esposito because I really liked him in the match against Fiorentina, how he was able to shield the ball, how he passed and how he ran. It was incredible.
Well, I am completely thrilled with both of them because Boni is actually excellent and each has strengths in different areas. So they complement each other excellently and overall also complement the first attacking duo.
Well, actually, I'm just finishing now. We have a completely different squad depth as 6 players have come in. Maybe not such stars as some other teams buy for huge amounts of money.
But if you look at the statistics, what they are good at, it's clear that we want to move to complete verticality. I don't know if it's because of the match with PSG, which showed us what verticality means, and we'll probably have nightmares about it for a long time. But Diouf, it's just the same forward, Luis Enrique, the same Boni, so the same Sucic in the end. So the direction is probably clearer how we want to play. And finally speaking, we have the squad depth because again, regarding Simone Inzaghi's goal, really, like he maybe had 10, 12, let's say 13 excellent players, but then actually when she was submerged on that bench, and there you saw Arnautovic and Tarami and Correa in attack and Slani, so it was a bit of a sadder sight, yeah.
Well, and I can't think of anything else we could discuss.
So I think we've exhausted the topic we had, and let's hope we wrap it up well before the international break.
And I'm actually getting ready for the Milan derby at San Siro, so I'll enjoy Serie Pita and hope that this time it will be victorious, not like last time when we lost 3-0.
Hey, so let's talk about the schedule. What's next for Inter? In a few days, it will be the next round of Serie A when we travel to the struggling Verona. Then 3 days later, as part of the Champions League, we host Kairat Almaty at home. So that's the 4th match in the series where we must secure the mandatory 3 points to create a good position for advancing, and then play the tougher matches in the Champions League with a cooler head and more calm. Well, and then we will return to Serie A. At home, we will host Lazio, which certainly won't be an easy match. That is on the 9th of November. And on the 23rd of November, we have the Derby della Madonnina, which you will personally attend.
So I will try to cheer, and I hope, as I said, we will make it. But finally, there will be cheering from the first minute.
I just wanted to add that we didn't mention that in the match with Fiorentina, the Ultras finally returns, and it was noticeable.
Yes, well, finally, although they renamed it, now it's called Second, or rather, not that they renamed it, but they have that banner which they allowed. So it's Secondo Anello Verde Milano, and it's actually the second green ring at San Siro. But it was finally nice that from the first minute there was cheering, so hopefully it will continue. And otherwise, from those 3 matches, we probably don't need to discuss Cara, although I hope I haven't jinxed them now. But personally, I am a bit more worried, paradoxically, about Verona than Lazio.
Do you think that in Verona, with the current Verona, we might struggle somehow?
You know what? But then again, Lazio is also such a specific team that it's just that Sarri would like to play his. Sarri was. It's a slightly older team, and if we press well, I think they might fall apart, whereas Verona is a much younger team, and I'm a bit worried that they managed to trouble even Juventus, although we are in much better form than Juventus. But then again, every match is different, but what do I know? Like,
when I consider it as losing 3-1 in Como is probably not a disgrace. At home, they drew 2-2 with Cagliari and 0-0 with Pisa, so also weaker opponents. They at least got a point there. They lost 0-1 to Sassuolo and 2-0 to AS Roma. And in the Cup, they were eliminated by Venice 1-0. Juventus, well, they drew 1-1 at home with Juventus, but that's the current Juventus. With Cremonese, 0-0. They got 4 from Lazio. With Udine, again 1-1, so it's not like they are really struggling in those matches. They are mostly close matches, more or less, but and they are not collecting too many points. Currently, they are 18th in the table, which is a relegation spot with 5 points from 9 matches. So 3rd from the bottom in Autumn is 3rd from the top.
well, I'm not saying that we should dominate there or anything, but I'm saying that because of the fact that it's purely like not historically, but what we actually see is that when there are some of those Italian teams that play either in quotes typically Italian or are more experienced, they don't really like it when they are pressed high. So I'm saying this more like that we might enjoy the match against Lazio, but again, I don't want to jinx anything. I'm just a bit more worried about Verona than Lazio. And I'm not saying that we should lose in Verona. That's not it. Just that it will be a bit, well, considering the time that we will be playing at 12:30, that's also a bit of a difference, you know.
That's a fact. Well, I'll add the table. So how it currently looks after almost completing the 9th round. The match Lazio-Pisa is still being played. It's currently 0-0, but Napoli leads the table with 21 points, the same as AS Roma. Just with a worse score, they are second. Well, next is third Inter, which has 18 points, the same as Milan's A-seeded. Again, we are just ahead of our city rivals by score. In 5th place is our dark horse, also from the betting Como with 16 points. 6th is currently Bologna, which has the same number of points as 7th Juventus. That's poor for the old lady. And 8th Cremonese, they had that excellent start to the league. Now it's a bit weaker, but they are still holding high. Atalanta is struggling, only 13 points, 9th place. Sassuolo is 10th, Lazio 11th, Udine 12th, followed by Turin, Cagliari, Parma, Lecce. As we expected, these teams there just above the relegation zone for now, Pisa, but there is still that match now with Lazio. Well, and currently on the rise in the rankings is Verona, and shockingly Fiorentina, which definitely doesn't have the squad for it, has only 4 points from 9 matches and hasn't won yet, and last for now is Genoa.
Like that Fiorentina is brutal. Like they just are. I had faith in Pioli, not saying for the title, but that they would just be. It will just be stable 7th or 8th place. So we put them in the predictions. But as for what they are doing, mainly in attack, it's like a tragedy. Well, because defensively, they can easily absorb the pressure. Although they did score 3 goals against us, but again, we actually beat them. But the fact that they should be second to last, that's a shock. And the same with Jan, is simply even Vieira, even Pioli is not working for him at all. Well, fortunately, Fiorentina is paradoxically collecting points, at least in Europe, for the Italian league. So at least there's that.
Hey, although in defense of Fiorentina a little, I must say that they certainly lost unnecessarily, or there are definitely slip-ups. Draws with Cagliari, an even worse draw with Pisa, and also a draw with Turin. But besides these teams I mentioned, well, they actually played. So they played with us, they played with Bologna, and they played with AC Milan, they played with AS Roma, they played with the now tough Como, and they played with Napoli, so only strong opponents. So maybe they will still catch on with some weaker teams that are not so strong defensively.
I don't say that they will be relegated. I think they might catch on later. Like they have a pretty good squad for me. They just need to wake up and start scoring goals. That's their biggest weakness.
And one last thing, we were predicting Cremonese to rise, I think, but we kind of forgot that there's this coach Nicola, who is supposedly a specialist and has managed to save a team 9 times, I think.
It's when you actually look at the points they already have, do you consider them as already saved, or do you still see them as a team that should be relegated?
I have a feeling now, I don't know if it was Empoli, I think it was in the previous season. I know there was some team that also had a promising start to the league, and then suddenly there came a period when they started losing everything and eventually got relegated.
Yes, it was Empoli. It was with that Everton, who is known for having good starts, and then it falls apart.
So I would not consider Cremonese to be a saved team yet, even though they have a good coach. But the squad, except for Jamie Vardy, who is also actually a veteran, doesn't have any particularly notable names. But they have accumulated some points, so they have a bit of a cushion, and there are teams that are struggling more, which they could potentially surpass to save themselves. Well, I assume that Fiorentina will move up. Maybe Verona will also climb out, but there is still Pisa, Lecce, maybe Cagliari will struggle a bit more. We'll see.
So when you mentioned a moment ago the opponents that Fiorentina had, Cremonese has also already faced AC Milan from those strong teams, Inter, Atalanta, so at least 4 of those tough opponents. So we'll see. I think that actually 14 points in the 9th round is quite a lot, and actually it will be enough to get, in quotes, only 20 points, which they might achieve. Well, it will be interesting. The whole league will be completely balanced.
Well, it's great that the league remains very balanced, and it will be entertaining and exciting on all fronts, whether it's promotion, the title, or European Cups.
Exactly. That sounds it. Okay, do you have anything else you would like to mention in this part? Or?
In conclusion, I will just traditionally add that we still haven't found reinforcements for our podcast team. ideally someone who can edit videos and possibly also audio, some passionate fan who would like to help us and contribute a bit to building this community around Inter, but also the entire Serie A, because I still occasionally come across some comments that there is demand for content from the Italian league and not just the Premier League all the time. So we need to raise our profile and we need more of that content. And since we all do this as a hobby and have other responsibilities, we could use some help.
Exactly. You wrapped it up nicely, and we really do this purely out of love for Inter and for Italian football as a whole. So any help is welcome.
So cheer, reach out to us, get in touch, write, comment, share. Everything helps.
And let's not forget to cheer and enjoy our beloved Inter, even though it's sometimes difficult, like in the match with Napoli, but we must believe that this year will be ours.